She calls for the third time today, not because anything's wrong, not because she needs something, but because she needs to know where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, if you're okay, if you're thinking of her. And when you don't answer, the guilt comes heavy, immediate, like you've committed a crime by living your own life. This is the psychology of mothers who can't let go. And if you grew up with one, you already know. Her love didn't feel like freedom, it felt like a leash, a beautiful, suffocating, guilt-laced leash that you're still trying to untangle yourself from. Today, we're going deep, not to vilify her, not to blame, but to understand what happens when a mother's love becomes a cage, and what it does to the child who grows up inside it. Because this isn't about bad mothers, it's about wounded ones, and the children who inherited those wounds. Let's start with what no one wants to say out loud. Not all maternal love is healthy, not all sacrifice is noble, and not all closeness is connection. Sometimes, what looks like devotion is actually desperation. What looks like protection is actually control. What looks like love is actually fear dressed up in a mother's voice saying, "I just worry about you." But worry is not the same as care. And need is not the same as love. Because here's the truth. When a mother can't let go, it's not really about you. It's about her, about the emptiness she's trying to fill, the identity she's trying to preserve, the life she didn't live that she's now trying to live through you. You are not her child. You are her purpose, her project, her reason for existing. And when you try to leave, you're not just leaving home, you're dismantling her entire sense of self. This is called enmeshment, and it's one of the most invisible forms of emotional abuse, because it hides behind love. Because how do you reject someone who gave you everything? How do you set boundaries with someone who says, "After all I've done for you"? You can't, so you don't, and the cage gets smaller. Let's talk about how this starts, because mothers who can't let go weren't born that way. They were made by their own childhoods, by their own unmet needs, by the holes inside them that they hoped motherhood would fill. Maybe she had a mother who was cold, absent, critical, so she swore she'd be different, she'd be close, she'd be involved, she'd never make her child feel alone. But she overcorrected. She didn't just get close, she merged. She didn't just stay involved, she became invasive. She didn't just love you, she consumed you. Or maybe she lost herself in motherhood, gave up her dreams, her identity, her sense of who she was outside of being your mom. And now, you're not just her child, you're her entire world. And if you leave what's left of her, this is the psychology of it. She's not holding on to you. She's holding on to the version of herself that only exists when you need her. And that's why she can't let go. Because letting go means facing the void, the emptiness, the questions she's been avoiding her entire life. Who am I if I'm not your mother? Now let's talk about what this does to you, because when you grow up with a mother who can't let go, you don't just lose your independence, you lose your sense of self. You learn that your feelings don't matter as much as hers, that your needs are selfish, that wanting space is betrayal, that growing up is abandonment. You learn to read her moods before you read your own, to manage her emotions before you acknowledge yours, to shrink yourself so she doesn't feel threatened by your growth. This is called emotional incest, and it's as damaging as it sounds, not because anything sexual happened, but because the roles reversed. You became her emotional partner, her therapist, her source of validation, and she became the child who needed constant reassurance that you weren't going to leave her. And here's where it gets insidious, because she doesn't see it. She thinks she's being a good mother, a devoted mother, a mother who cares. But care doesn't invade your privacy. Care doesn't guilt you for having your own life. Care doesn't make you feel like you owe your existence to someone else. That's not care, that's control. And control, no matter how loving it looks, is still a cage. Let's talk about the guilt, because this is the weapon, the invisible chain that keeps you tethered even when you're miles away. She doesn't have to say it directly, she just sighs a little too long, goes quiet when you mention plans that don't include her, says things like, "I'm fine. You go have fun. I'll just be here, alone." And suddenly you're 8 years old again, terrified that if you don't make her happy, something terrible will happen, that if you disappoint her, you'll lose her love. Except you can't lose what was never unconditional, because real love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't require constant proof. It doesn't make you feel like you're abandoning someone by simply living your life. But her love does. And that's how you know it's not about love. It's about attachment. It's about fear. It's about her using you to fill a void that was never yours to fill. Psychologists call this covert emotional manipulation, and it's devastating because you can't fight it. You can't point to a specific thing she did wrong. She didn't hit you. She didn't yell. She just needs you. And needing someone isn't abuse, right? Except when it is. Except when that need becomes a noose. Except when you can't make a decision, date someone, move somewhere, or live your life without her voice in your head saying, "What about me?" And here's what happens in adulthood. You become one of two people. Either you break free and spend the rest of your life feeling guilty about it, or you stay tethered and spend the rest of your life resenting her. Some of you ran, you moved across the country, you set boundaries, you limited contact, and every single time you feel like the villain. Because how do you explain to people that your mother's love felt like drowning, that you had to choose between her happiness and your sanity? They don't get it. They say, "But she loves you." They say, "She's just worried." They say, "You'll regret this when she's gone." But they didn't grow up in your house. They didn't feel the weight of her needs pressing down on every decision. They didn't spend their childhood trying to be enough for someone who would never be filled. And then there are those of you who stayed, who couldn't leave, who are still answering the third call of the day, still cancelling plans because she's upset, still living your life in orbit around hers because the guilt of leaving is heavier than the pain of staying. And you're exhausted, you're resentful, you love her and you hate that you love her. You want to help her and you hate that you feel responsible for her happiness. This is what enmeshment does. It makes love feel like a burden. It makes obligation feel like devotion. And it makes you forget that you were never supposed to be her emotional support system. You were supposed to be her child. Let's go deeper into the psychology of the mother, because understanding her doesn't excuse her, but it does help you see that this was never about you being enough. This was always about her being empty. Mothers who can't let go are often women who never fully individuated themselves, who never figured out who they were outside of being someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Their identity is tied to roles, not selfhood. And when the role shifts, when the child grows up and doesn't need them anymore, they panic, because if they're not needed, who are they? This is called role fusion, and it's why she fights your independence so hard, because your independence is her obsolescence, your growth is her grief, your freedom is her fear that she will be forgotten. And she's not entirely wrong, because the relationship was built on you needing her. And if you don't need her anymore, what's left? That's the question she's terrified to answer. So instead she holds tighter, she creates crises, she manufactures reasons for you to come back. She makes herself small, helpless, sick, fragile, anything to keep you close. Not because she's evil, but because she's terrified, and fear makes people do terrible things in the name of love. Now let's talk about the cost to you. Because this doesn't just affect your relationship with her, it affects everything. You struggle with boundaries because you were never allowed to have them. You struggle with guilt because you were taught that your needs are selfish. You struggle with independence because every step you took away from her felt like betrayal. You might avoid commitment because commitment feels like entrapment. Or you might seek partners who need you the way she did, because that's the only version of love you recognize. You might overfunction in relationships, constantly trying to fix, manage, soothe, because that's what you did with her. Or you might shut down emotionally, because vulnerability feels like giving someone power to control you. You might struggle to trust your own decisions because her voice is still louder than yours. You might sabotage your own success because achieving something she didn't feels like leaving her behind. This is intergenerational trauma, and it doesn't stop with you unless you stop it. Unless you look at the pattern and say, this ends here. So what do? First you name it. You stop calling it love when it's control. You stop calling it care when it's guilt. You stop letting her rewrite history with phrases like, "I only wanted what was best for you." What was best for you was freedom. And she didn't give you that. Second, you grieve. Not her. but the mother you needed and didn't get, the one who could have loved you without needing you, the one who could have celebrated your independence instead of fearing it. That mother doesn't exist, and mourning her is part of healing. Third, you set boundaries, and you hold them even when she cries, even when she says you've changed, even when she plays the victim and makes you the villain, because boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. They're you saying, I love you, but I will not disappear to make you comfortable. And if she can't respect that, then the relationship has to change, not because you're punishing her, but because you're finally choosing yourself. Here's the truth she'll never tell you. She doesn't want you to be happy. She wants you to need her, and those are not the same thing. Real love wants you to grow, to leave, to build a life that's yours, not an extension of hers. But her love wants you to stay small, to stay close, to stay hers. And you have to decide, do you want to be loved or do you want to be free? Because with her, you might never get both. Psychologist Donald Winnicott said, the good enough mother starts off with an almost complete adaptation to her infant's needs. As time goes by, she adapts less and less completely, gradually, according to the infant's growing ability to deal with her failure. But your mother didn't do that. She didn't let you grow, she didn't let you fail, she didn't let you need her less. She kept adapting, kept hovering, kept making herself essential, and in doing so, she kept you dependent, not because it was good for you, but because it was necessary for her. So here's what you need to hear. You are not responsible for her loneliness. You are not responsible for her identity crisis. You are not responsible for making her life meaningful. You are her child, not her purpose. And if she can't let go, that's her work to do, not yours. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to build a life she doesn't control. You are allowed to love her from a distance if that's what you need to survive. And no, it won't feel good. She'll make sure of that. She'll cry. She'll guilt. She'll weaponize her pain and make you feel like the monster. But you're not the monster. You're the child who finally grew up. And that was always supposed to happen, even if she never wanted it to. You are not abandoning her by choosing yourself. You are not cruel for needing space. You are not ungrateful for wanting a life that's yours. You are just finally becoming the person you were always meant to be. The person she was too afraid to let you become. And that is not your failure. It's hers. But it's also your freedom. So take it. And don't look back.